Let's bring in our guest today to take all of this up and to offer his perspective, his considerable knowledge. Joining us now is the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, great to have you with us here on the Great America Show again. Let's start, if we may, with what seems to be a Republican conference in the House now in turmoil. The conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, and others don't want to proceed with a short-term solution, so there won't be one. Again, another continuing resolution, another fig leaf dreamed up by Speaker McCarthy. Your reaction to just how much turmoil we're likely to see over the next week or two?
Well, I'm hoping their opportunities are followed up on, Lou. It's, the internal bickering of the Republicans is, kind of is a distraction, I think, from the main issue, which is right now there's an opportunity to leverage the continuing resolution fight, meaning they got to pass this somehow. They need to do something in the next 2 weeks to keep the government open. And my question for Republicans and honest Democrats, assuming there are any in the House, is what are you willing to shut the government down? What are you willing to say no government money unless this is done? And I would submit that what has to be on that list are 3 or 4 things. One is defunding the prosecutions of Trump and other innocent Americans, defunding the censorship of tens of millions of Americans that the Biden administration continues to engage in, defunding the invasion funded and aided and abetted by Biden, meaning no money to settle illegal aliens, money only used to return aliens to their home or back across the border, and protecting our military in the short term from the Marxist propaganda that's being foisted upon them. And there are probably other topics that your listeners would want to see taken care of. And the secret that Congress doesn't want you to know and want Americans to know is that everything they hate about what the Biden administration is doing in the next 2 weeks could be defunded because of this leverage of the continuing resolution.
I think you're exactly right. And the conservatives, at least, I have a strong instinct and have made, apparently, some very principled judgments and intend that there not be a continuing resolution and that their demands for responsible or as responsible a position can be achieved right now on the budget levels, spending levels, and Speaker McCarthy is right now trying to game the system again. He's playing cute. He is as weak-kneed and duplicitous as I think we've had in the speakership since, Paul Ryan? I mean, that's what he looks like, an acolyte of Paul Ryan. Ineffective, pretentious, self-important, and untalented.
And there's a question of competency, right? And the concern is that when he was brought into the speakership, we're going to have all this done. We're going to have all regular order. All the appropriation bills are going to be done, and we're not going to be jamming ourselves again. And I think there was one that was done, and maybe there'll be 1 or 2 done by the end of the month. No, that's 3 out of 12 at best.
You're right.
This was all supposed to be done by June, Lou. And, for all this talk about him being a consensus figure that can manage conservatives and the so-called moderates in the party, he hasn't been able to do that. Otherwise, these bills would have been passed already.
He really is. He really is a pretender, isn't he? A poseur. And he had, I think he's now completely lost that opportunity, but he had the opportunity to be a great speaker because of all of those these momentous forces and issues that are colliding at one time is truly historic. And indeed, he had that opportunity, and right now he has whiffed in every direction. He has no idea what to do next strategically, substantively, or based in any kind of ethical or moral or principled stand for what is the right thing. this right thing can be amorphous, but right now the right thing is clear and concrete and specific as it has ever been. We have a government that is out of control, spending 33 to the point of this moment, $33 trillion in debt. That is just about, we're approaching doubling the GDP. By the time you get another 17 trillion there, you've doubled the GDP. And this country will be in well, we're already in deep trouble fiscally. And we have a Marxist Dem party that hates America. They hate Americans. They hate everything that money is supposed to go to, like a justice system which every man and woman in this country has a right to presumption of innocence, due process, constitutional rights, all of which now are being negated or neutralized by this Marxist Dem Biden regime. And why even decent working people who happen to be Democrats don't yet get that, I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, the party, unfortunately, the Democratic Party is contending with their, this rising communist wing. Typically they have been run by corrupt corporatists and, who've come to terms with big labor. Now you got this rising communist wing that, all rules are getting thrown out the window, and there's this opposition politically, and then obviously their cultural allies on the outside to the institutions of our nation, and they want to overthrow them, and we're funding it. So if you're concerned about law enforcement being politicized in such a way that the federal government's jailing their enemies, they want a Stalinist show trial in Georgia, DOJ monies, taxpayer monies go to subsidize that prosecutor's office down there. Why are we giving her any money now? These are all questions that should be asked within the next 2 weeks. So you're highlighting some of the issues, Lou, and my question is, well, where's the opposition? Where's the principled opposition, both within the Democratic Party? I would argue they should be held accountable too. But secondly, the House Republicans, they say they're against this, yet to date they've fully funded it. And based on what I'm seeing, the latest deal is they're trying to slide through with some conservatives. They're trying to, just get their budget cuts. And I'm saying, well, that's not good enough. We need to stop the damage now. We can't wait for next year.
Exactly.
To stop Donald Trump from being thrown in jail. We got to do it now. We can't wait till next year to stop them from censoring tens of millions of Americans. Right now, we need to do it. What are we going to do? Let another 1 million or 2 people across the border? But where's the urgency in protecting our nation?
The urgency, the only urgency I can detect is another opportunity for the speaker to stand before cameras and microphones and be given the opportunity not to say anything at all. He has become truly a puppet himself, a puppet of the uniparty, the establishment, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. He is a tool of the Marxist Dems and the Biden regime. There is no doubt of that. Why do you suppose he pushed aside the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, the chairman of Ways and Means over the weekend, so that he could hold if you will, the focus of all of the networks over the weekend to spew the drivel that he did? It makes no sense. He's weakening the party with every appearance and with every, halting, difficult to comprehend utterance that he makes. We're talking with Tom Fitton, a man that you understand clearly and who understands this political world of ours clear as a bell. We'll be right back with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, in just one moment. Please stay with us. We're back talking with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. Tom, you and Judicial Watch are indispensable watchdogs over this government of ours, a federal government, I would argue, that has been completely taken over by the Marxist Dems and the Biden regime, if you will, the Obama-Biden regime. Your thoughts about why even the conservative Republicans want to talk budget at a moment of historical crisis like this? Why are they so, I guess, inured to the realities of this moment, which is existential, I believe, for the Republic and for every American who truly loves this country?
Well, I think the challenge is, and because many of them are really good conservatives, right, and they're focused on the spending issue, and I think this, and I tactically. Maybe it's a political discussion. I think the spending issue is a symptom of the corruption that has to be addressed, right? Mm-hmm. And if folks use the federal government as a piggy bank to line their pockets, take care of their friends, of course, spending is going to be out of control. If it's controlled by lawless criminals who, want to pursue a far left communist agenda, of course, the government spending is going to be out of control. So I think accountability, defunding the worst of the abuses is inexorably linked to sound budget management, really. And it kind of shows you, because of this inflection of the CR, right, there's an opportunity to shut this down. And it highlights that everyone who tells you that these budget issues are separate from these corruption issues we're talking about, well, that veil's been lifted. That can't be taken at face value anymore, because the secret's out. And of course, it's not a secret. It makes constitutional sense. The Justice Department uses tax money to abuse people. We know that now, and Congress doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. Now, there are some members. Congressman Clyde is going to be pushing at least an appropriations measure. I don't know, in the context of the CR or a larger appropriations measure, to defund prosecutions of Trump, both in the Justice Department in New York and Fulton County. There are other similar measures out there. So there are a few who want to, make people vote on this, and we should highlight and raise them up.
Right. I agree with that to a point. And I think the congressman is to be commended for what he's trying to do, and others. The conservative wing of the party right now, I think, is all that stands between us and the collapse of the republic. So I'm not saying anything lightly or disparagingly, intentionally certainly, about that group of patriots. They've demonstrated themselves from the beginning of the 118th Congress to be true patriots and true heroes. But we are at a point where, and you're pointing to this, we are at a point where we have only one enemy right now that's more powerful than the Marxist left, and that is time itself. The longer we persist in the pretense that time is on our side and that we have time to educate, I love the way the Republicans say this, educate the public. The public is educated. They've been watching these hearings. They know it. 70% of the country knows that President Trump is being persecuted politically, and every motivation in his persecution is political. Poll after poll confirms that. Joe Biden has a 39% approval rating, the lowest since Jimmy Carter. We know that. What in hell would be stopping real patriots in leadership in the Republican Party? And yes, I'm talking about McConnell, and I am talking about Thune, and I am talking about Barrasso. I'm talking about Cornyn and Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker. They aren't doing a thing that would suggest that there is any urgency, any alarm whatsoever, and that this is not a constitutional crisis. It is, and it damn well better be, and the conflict should be joined by the Republicans immediately. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and it's a constitutional conflict without precedent, right? And the goal, you don't indict someone, well, really 5 times over 5 months if you count the superseding indictment by the Justice Department. So he's been indicted 3 times by the Justice Department, one by New York, one in Fulton County. You don't do that to a man unless you want to put him in jail. And they're desperate to put him in jail next year. And in many ways, the indictments have already ruined the election, compromised the election. And, if I were in Congress, I'd be thinking of ways to mitigate that damage by checking those abuses. Heck, let me go a little bit further. If you think Joe Biden is a crook, why would you continue to vote? Why wouldn't you take advantage of this continuing resolution and be willing to shut down government unless he resigns?
Exactly.
So there are this is the thing. Your listeners should be calling their members of Congress and asking them how they're going to use the budget process over the next 2 weeks, this continuing resolution fight, to ensure this corruption is defunded and defanged. 202-225-3121. 202-225-3121. It's the Capitol Hill switchboard. Figure out who your member of Congress is and say, I want to speak to so-and-so. They'll patch you through and professionally, insistently, and directly communicate with your members of Congress. And certainly you bolster what the House may want to do in the Senate. Talk to your senators as well. Let them know that you expect them to support this move, hopefully that will come from the House, to rein in the deep state.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And the number is 202-225-3171, folks. We'll have it on our website and every other place from here in perpetuity. We just got word that the House Oversight Committee will subpoena, are you ready? Hunter Biden and James Biden's bank records as early as this week. God bless you, Oversight Committee and Chairman James Comer. Your reaction to that development?
It's a welcome development. It's one, better late than never, right? Because we've been waiting for this type of activity to take place. And what McCarthy did in terms of the right thing is better late than never in terms of beginning the inquiry. Something I've been calling for. I'm sure I've talked about it with you, Lou. I talked about how all these committees, all their investigations needed to be escalated into impeachment inquiries so they would have better chances at court and politically in getting information that they need. And that's what he finally has done. And what's remarkable about this, an impeachment inquiry, there are 3 committees now charged with the impeachment inquiry. You have Comer's committee, the Judiciary Committee, led by Jordan, and the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the tax committee. I think it's Congressman Smith. So
Jason Smith, yeah.
Right. And so there are three impeachment inquiries, right, into Biden. And that's welcome. Let's hurry up and move it along and get those records, get that testimony, bring Hunter in yesterday.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. And at the same time, we have another issue that I think really should be ginned up as well by this House of Representatives, and that is a separate committee, a special committee, a commission, whatever you want to call it, to focus like the broadest laser that you can possibly apply with great heat to the issue of electoral integrity, and to find out exactly what's going on and to come up with recommendations and to facilitate on an honest election in 2020, because we do not want to watch any candidate in the Republican Party for president or Senate or anywhere else go into into 2024 without an organization, without understanding precisely the laws, and to make certain that they have representatives in every damn precinct in the country, great American citizens standing guard over our democratic process. Because if we stand back like fools, like Ronna McDaniel would love us to do one more time, and all of her associates, and I'm talking about the rhinos in the Republican Party, roll them over and put real patriots, put America first, make America great again, Americans in charge of that daggum election. Your thoughts before we go to a quick pause here.
Yeah, I mean, some states have gotten ahead of the issue and passed some more stringent measures. They banned Zuckerbucks and put in more sensible security measures for elections, all of which are necessary, but certainly not sufficient given the broad nature of the left's attack on our election systems. And, in Michigan, for instance, they put forward rules that would make it much easier to steal elections because they've decimated any the security measures in place or put new measures in place that would make it impossible to counteract and let alone figure out whether there's voter fraud. So it's a significant challenge, and that clock is ticking at the federal level if there's going to be any federal, response to this. But given the way Congress is, it's going to be nearly impossible to get anything through. It would be easier to get Trump to be, let's put it this way. The Democrats you would face less resistance from Democrats forcing Biden to resign than getting election integrity measures passed.
Without a doubt. As a matter of fact, I mean, they would be enthusiastic about getting Biden out of there and Kamala. There would be probably a special bounty and bonus available to anyone who could come up with that solution very quickly. And I understand that the good governor of California is among those who is seeking that bounty. We're talking with Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. When we come back, do you think we should think about defunding the entire Biden administration? Why not defund, first and foremost, not only the FBI and DOJ, but isn't it time to be honest about how corrupt our judiciary? How about defunding the Washington, D.C. courts en masse? Period. Full stop. We're coming right back. Stay with us. We're back with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. He and his organization doing great work, as always, in oversight. There is so much to look over, isn't there? To watch over, Tom. I mean, I don't know how in the world. I don't know when we've ever. Well, let's just be honest. We've never been in a bigger mess than this, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all the federal agencies, for example, you got the military kind of eating itself and destroying its own leadership potential by force feeding our troops and our rising leadership in the various military academies, this anti-American critical theory, this Marxist theory, propaganda. You have the promotion of censorship vis-a-vis the CDC and Department of Homeland Security. You've got Department of Homeland Security actually enabling an invasion rather than preventing it and actually helping illegal aliens get to where they're not allowed to be. And contrary to federal law, you have the public health agencies with this COVID mania, pushing vaccines that have been rejected as untrustworthy by the American people for good reason.
But approved by the FDA.
So no one trusts them. And then, then we've got the foreign policy debacles. And on top of that, we have Biden, who's compromised by his own corruption, most of which relates to foreign money.
All of what you say is true. Why is there any pretense on the part of the Republicans. I understand the complicity of the national corporate media. I understand the interest that is served by the deep state in supporting this corrupt politician whose incipient momentum was created by none other than Barack Obama. I understand all of that. But why can't people understand that if they do anything this president asks, they're serving communist China, they are serving Romania, they're serving Iran? Why can't the leadership of the Republican Party understand this is the time to stand against everything that is corrupt in our federal government? And that is the entirety of the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, maybe your description of it is so overwhelming to them they don't know what to do. I don't know. I mean, I think some of them do understand the crisis we're in, and certainly decimating funding for the federal agencies that are out of control ought to be in the mix. Defunding the worst of the worst in terms of individual employees of the government ought to be in the mix. Defunding the worst of the worst in terms of the abuse of the agencies. We're talking about Jack Smith, or denying Justice Department funding to those who would destroy a republic in New York and Fulton County, Georgia, with these election interference efforts to jail a former president based on, fanciful fictional pretexts. And then, of course, we have our nation that we're losing to the invaders. Well, I don't know. It seems to me that you can figure, how about this, Lou? This is the deal I'd like to make. Is there one thing they'd shut the government down that the government's doing badly and they don't want to fund? Is there just one thing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Pick one.
I can't. One. Every agency is corrupt. It's been corrupted by the Marxist Dems. It's been corrupted by the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, and as we've been looking at all of this, I mean, the idea that back in the Trump years, when wages were starting to recover, when the economy was growing, when the country was prosperous, think about it. That was 2.5 years ago, hit by a virus that we now know was engineered. It did originate in the Wuhan laboratories. We do know that Dr. Fauci was the highest paid person in the federal government, that he and his wife, according to the Daily Mail, netted $2 million during the so-called COVID pandemic. It was really the China Wuhan virus. We know that the FBI had 4 directors who in succession lied to the Congress of the United States. We do know they tried to frame a candidate for president. We do know they collaborated with the DNC and the campaign of Hillary Rodham Clinton to destroy his candidacy and then to destroy his presidency. We know this. We know, as a matter of fact, that there's been political persecution of this man for 8 years with no finding of wrongdoing whatsoever, whether through a special counsel or the impeachments, 2 of them. And here we are again now with local DAs, state attorneys general, and a jackal of a junkyard dog special prosecutor who is nothing more than a Marxist hack attacking this president daily, and who wanted to gag him as the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party and a former president who will defeat Joe Biden or whomever is remaining of that tawdry regime come November of 2024. You're thinking.
Oh, wow. I mean, you're highlighting a lot of the crisis. And, I think that there's a test coming up, right? There's a test coming up for the leadership in the House, and whether they fail or pass, we're going to find out in the next 2 weeks. And I think one of the interesting outcomes could be a new speaker, given what some of his colleagues are saying about his leadership failures to date. I don't know. The frustrating thing that we've had with Speaker McCarthy directly is that Judicial Watch had been seeking the January 6th videos, right, through a common law right of public access in a federal court case. And the Pelosi Congress said, no, you can't have the records. They're not, it's too sensitive. They're not public records under the law and such. And, that legal position hasn't changed under McCarthy. So McCarthy's taken the legal position of Nancy Pelosi and told us under law we can't have access to these videos. Making them available in part through a laborious process here in Washington isn't the same as making them widely available to the American people. You can't. I don't understand. Well, I do understand, but it's really terrible that Speaker McCarthy is hiding this information from the American people and doing just what Pelosi did.
And it is horrific and gut-rending, heartbreaking that we cannot come up with a solution to bring those political prisoners of the Marxist left who've been incarcerated in the gulags of Washington, D.C. and environs, particularly in Virginia and around in other facilities in some cases. And he is sitting there piecemealing out those videos, 40 some odd thousand hours of videos that are exculpatory. It's just, I don't understand why there isn't a furor in this country about the simple reality. We've lost our sense of obligation and duty to our fellow citizens to protect their rights just as strongly as we would insist upon our rights. We are a nation in turmoil. We are in pain. We can argue about what the sources are, the reasons, the complex forces at work here, but simply put, the Republican Party is filled with gutless, indifferent rhinos who think they are just as smart as the Democrats, so they act like them and forestall the conservatives and the fundamentalists of our party who are committed to that Constitution. I can find a number of ways to say it, but your reaction to that thought, if you would.
Well, what was it what did Newt Gingrich once say about Bob Dole? Tax collector for the welfare state. And so Republicans have to decide whether they're just going to be a check writer for the deep state or whether they're going to do something about it. And I think the reason that things are happening the way they are, to the extent they are, that good things are happening, meaning an impeachment inquiry is finally taking place. There is a push among some conservatives on the House to defund the issues that we're talking about. The destruction of our elections through the prosecutions of Trump is because people are sharing their views with their members. The members are hearing about this at home, and that's why there's this agitation that you see in Congress right now and this discord within the Republican caucus, because they're all hearing it. Some of them want to ignore it. Others want to follow where the voters are and provide leadership for their concerns.
Well, Tom Fitton, as always, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I know that our audience is delighted to hear you and your thoughts and to know what good hands Judicial Watch is in. We're indebted to your Judicial Watch organization and all that you're doing for the country, and we appreciate so much those efforts. Your concluding thoughts. We always give our guests the last word, Tom. The floor is yours.
Well, as always, Lou, no matter what Congress does or doesn't do, Judicial Watch will be pursuing these issues. We've got litigation about the border, litigation about what the Hunter Biden family crime syndicate is up to, litigation on COVID and the vaccines, fighting in court to save and ensure our elections are cleaner. So no matter the concern that any of your listeners have, it's likely Judicial Watch is doing something about it, unlike too many of our brethren here in Washington.
Tom Fitton, thank you so much, and I hope everyone listening will take Tom's suggestion. The number is 202-225-3121, 202-225-3171. Call your representatives and senators and tell them just exactly what you think needs to be done and when it should be done to save the republic. Tom Fitton, thank you, sir. God bless you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lou.